Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. This is the Easy QS channel where we discuss concepts building civil engineering, and more specifically we love to discuss concepts in quantity survey which are a bit difficult for students, which they find challenging. Once in class they may have concepts that may bypass them. So in this channel we help them to have a recap about what is to be learned in that unit, and also we help them go through their assignments and maybe have tutorials for all those who are doing distance learning. Maybe you don't have a tutor, we are here for you. So in this lesson for today, we will be discussing about how to do taking off substructure works. We have really done a lot of videos on the same, but still it's an area where students find it very challenging in terms of taking off. So we shall go through the whole process of taking off substructure works, and today's lesson will be able to show students how to measure it. We will not do any calculation. I'll just be explaining how to measure different things in the taking off. Yani, in the taking off, there's a list of items that you have to go through one by one. For example, you have to clear the site, you have to remove the vegetable soil, you have to reduce the level. So we will understand how should we measure all this. So welcome back. In today's lesson, we are going to use the NRM2. That is the standard method of measurement in different countries. We said that different countries use different methods of measurement. And in today's lesson, we are going to use the new revised method of measurement. So if you are using a different method of measurement, maybe SMM, maybe ARM, you just need to go to the method of measurement and consult what it says. If it says you should measure something by meter squared, then you know maybe for a floor it is length times width. If it says about meter squared for a wall, it's length times height. And if it says like if the concrete for the floor is in meter squared, that's when we are saying it's length times width. What about concrete for a beam? That's when if it says meter cubed, it's length times width times height. Do you understand? If it's a very thick floor, mass concrete in the floor, and it says meter cubed, then it's length times width times the thickness. So you just need to consult your method of measurement so that you can be able to know, especially where it talks about meters squared and meters cubed. But in today's lesson, we shall look at it from the new revised method of measurement. How do we measure all these things? Alright, so when we are taking off substructure works, substructure works is the foundation basically. And when we get to site and we want to start constructing a house, we will find a site which is not cleared, which has vegetable soil. Nothing is done on the site. Maybe there are trees, maybe there are shrubs, maybe there are existing buildings that need to be demolished. We need to remove all that. So our focus is how to measure things like site clearance. So the first thing that we do when we get to site is clear the site. Site clearance. Once we get to site, maybe the site has vegetation, it has trees, it has shrubs, it has undergrowths, then maybe it has existing buildings. We need to clear the site. Site clearance, how is it measured? We usually have a site. Maybe the site is rectangular. We have got to the site. We have realized the site is rectangular. This is the plot of land. But where we are constructing the building is maybe just an area like this. Definitely, we will clear the whole site. But when it comes to doing a bill of quantities, a BQ, when we are taking off, taking off is just measuring. We will measure only where the building occupies. We will not measure the whole site. We will measure only where the building occupies. Maybe the building is rectangular. Then we will bear in mind if the walls of the building are like this. When we are doing the trenches, the walls will be built on top of the trenches. Maybe this is the trench. This is the trench, and we have concrete below here, the strip foundation. Here we have the concrete. The wall will be positioned at the center of the foundation. Alright? So if this is the wall and this is the trench, you see, if this is the wall and this is the wall here, we need to add this spread of the foundation because the spread is part of the building. So when we are clearing the site, we will not measure using the dark line, we will measure using the broken line around it. The broken line symbolizes the length of the building plus the foundation spread both sides. Alright? It symbolizes the width of the building plus the foundation spread on both sides. So we have said this is the whole site. We are clearing the site. How do we measure the site? Where we shall site clearance in relation to the building for the bill of quantities, we will take the measurement, external measurement of the building, including the foundation spread around the wall. And we have said this foundation spread is this distance between the edge of the trench and the wall, where the concrete below here in strip foundation will be. Because we will have to do a trench, lay the concrete inside the trench, then come and construct the wall at the center of the concrete, of the strip concrete, of the foundation concrete, in other words. So site clearance is usually measured for that area. The next measurement that we will do is the removal of the vegetable soil. Removal of vegetable soil. What is vegetable soil? Vegetable soil is that soil that supports growth of vegetation. So after clearing the site, we have cut down trees. We will remove all the grass, the undergrowths. We will demolish all existing buildings, and that one is we measure it by meters squared. All other works like demolishing buildings, actually maybe it's a big cost for demolishing a big building. That one will be accounted for in the preliminaries. What we measure in site clearance is the basic site clearance of removal of vegetables, of removal of grass, cutting down trees, and if there are so many trees and there are big trees, that one also some extra cost is usually calculated for in the preliminaries. Alright, so site clearance is usually measured in meters squared. Then the same area that we do site clearance, we usually remove the vegetable soil. So the same area including the foundation spread, we have calculated this length times width. It's the same area for the removal of the vegetable soil. Alright, so the average depth for the removal of vegetable soil is usually 150 millimeters, and unless the structural engineer states otherwise. But the depth for the excavation of vegetable soil is usually 150 millimeters. So I will use an illustration to show how vegetable soil is usually excavated. Assuming this is the level of the site, the whole site is at this level. For this area where it is enclosed by a broken line, we usually come down by 150 millimeters. We excavate the vegetable soil. So we will excavate, we'll come down with 150 millimeters. Alright? So the whole site will be this level, but the level of where the building will be constructed together with where the trenches will be dug, so that the trenches here will be here. The trenches will be like here. Then the wall will come from here. Alright? You see, even the foundation wall, it shall be somewhere here. So that's why we were saying we will take the external dimensions of the building, then we add the spread. The same case here. Alright, so the level of the site will be 150 millimeters lower than the other level of the whole site. That is what we call removal of the vegetable soil. The next thing that we will do when taking off is the reducing of the levels. Reducing of the levels. What is reducing levels? You see, we have already excavated 150 millimeters from the normal ground level. When we say reducing the level, it's like after removal of the vegetable soil, that soil that was supposed to support vegetation growth, the soil is not yet stable. Alright? So we need to go deeper to find the level where the soil is more stable. So in the structural drawings, maybe we had the structural drawing here. This was the wall. Then the wall had concrete below here. Here we had concrete. So we had been told that from here, at this level, it's where we shall lay the hardcore. So here there was hardcore. Then here there is some marram blinding. Then after the marram blinding, we shall do the DPM. The DPM will be here. Then we shall do the mass concrete, the VRC, vibrated reinforced concrete. So here, maybe it's where the concrete is. Then the concrete is usually above the level of the ground. So maybe this was the ground level. If this depth, assuming this hardcore was going for 350 millimeters deep hardcore, then for the blinding, it was 50 millimeters blinding. So we had the normal ground level here, and this is the ground level. We excavated the vegetable soil, so we removed 150 millimeters thick. So in order to know whether we shall reduce the level, we will come and calculate from here up to here, below the hardcore. This level is where construction can be done. We will take 50 plus 350. We will get a total of 400. So that tells us that from the ground level, we need to go down up to a depth of 400. When we have removed the vegetable soil, we have removed 150. So after 150, have we got to the stable ground where construction can take place? Of course not. So we shall take 50 plus 350, it's 400. 400, that is what we should go down with from the ground level. We shall deduct 150 and we shall get 250. So that tells us that from the ground level, we need to remove the vegetable soil to a depth of 150. Then we need to excavate further, reduce the level further to a depth, by a depth of 250 millimeters, so that we can get to the stable ground where now hardcore can be laid. Then from there we can excavate the trenches. So we do not excavate the trenches from the ground level, we excavate the trenches from the reduced level. We need to understand these levels. First of all, here we have the ground level. After removal of the vegetable soil, we usually call removal of the vegetable soil stripping the ground of the vegetable soil. So how do we strip? It's like the ground had a cover. If it had a cover, it was covered by the vegetable soil. Once we remove this vegetable soil, we say that we have stripped the ground of its cover. So this level after the removal of the vegetable soil is called the stripped level. The stripped level after the removal of the vegetable soil. When we go deeper and reduce the level, this level is usually called the reduced level. Okay, so we have 3 levels. We have the ground level, we have the stripped level, we have the reduced level. So we do not excavate the trenches from the ground level. We do not excavate the trenches from the stripped level unless if you calculate this depth, it is the same as 150. If it's more than that, we will have to reduce the level further until a place where the ground is stable. So that is what we call the reduced level. Now, all the sites, you can see, the whole site will be at the ground level. But where the building will be positioned will be at the reduced level. So the whole area where the building will be positioned will be at this level. There'll be a difference in height. Here, a difference in level, here and here. It will be like there is a hole. Alright? So from there, now we can excavate the trenches. Before we go to the excavation of the trenches, how do we measure for the reduced level? The reduced level is usually measured in area, and it's the same area that we did site clearance. The same area is equal to the same area that we removed the vegetable soil, and it is equal to the same area that we reduced the level. Alright? So we shall now go to excavation of the trenches. Right. So for the excavation of these trenches, maybe you see like here we had this foundation wall. The trench will come up to the ground level, and even this side the trench shall come up to the reduced level. This is the trench, because the whole ground will be here. When we are constructing, the whole ground where we are constructing will be at this level, the reduced level. So we shall begin the trench excavation from the reduced level up to the bottom of the trench. Okay, so for the trenches, how do we calculate, how do we measure for the excavation of the trenches? The excavation of the trenches is usually measured in terms of volume. Volume of what? Volume of the soil that will be removed from the trench. You see, this is a strip foundation. So this is the trench. So that we can be able to price the excavation of the trenches, we will require to calculate the length of the trench. So that brings us to the other. This is the building. Assuming we are using a very simple building, like a rectangular building. And in this building, you have been told that this is the wall. This is the wall. So if we have this wall, very well, this is the most basic building that we can use. If we have the wall here, we want to know what will be the width of the trench. First of all, let's sketch the trench on this building. This is the wall. And the wall, the trench, we are told here, the distance, the thickness of the trench here, it's 600. Then this wall, we are told that it is 200 millimeters thick wall. Alright? So, let us sketch the trench in the drawing. So, if we take 600, we deduct 200. 600 deduct 200, it's 400. 400 divided by 2. 200 for this side, 200 for this side. Alright, so it shall be the trench goes inside by 200 and it goes outside by 200. So it has a spread to the inside by 200, then it has a spread to the outside by 200. So what does that mean? This is the wall. The trench will be inside by 200. So if we sketch the trench on the building, it shall be like this. The trench will be like that. Then on the outside, it shall be like this. So if the wall was 200, this wall is 200, and we are shown that the wall is positioned at the center of the trench, which measures 600. This wall is at the center of the trench, which measures 600. Where will be the trench in this diagram? This is the wall, it measures 600. It's at the center of this trench that measures 600. So there will be some space in the inside of the building and some space in the outside of the building. That space is what we call foundation spread. So we said when we are clearing the site, we will measure including the foundation spread. When we are removing the vegetable soil, we will include the foundation spread. And when we are reducing the level, we shall include the foundation spread. Now, we want to know, how do we find the length of the trench? This trench going round, how do we calculate its length? And we know that this trench is the one made up of these broken lines. When we are excavating the trench, the wall is not existent. But one thing we know is that the center of this trench is the center of this wall, because the wall is positioned at the center of the trench. So how do we calculate the length of the trench? We have two options here. Brings us to the calculation of the center line. Actually, we have done a video on calculation of the center line. You just need to go back to that video so that you can know the different ways of calculating the center line. We shall link that video in the description box so that you can go and see the various ways of finding the center line. For now, we shall use the simplest way of calculating the center line. Alright, so the center line is this line. When we go around the trench at the center. Here at the center, we go around the trench. This is the center line. That one will give us the length of the trench. Alright? Once we take the center line of the trench, we shall multiply by the width of the trench. Then we shall multiply by the depth of the trench. Alright? Let me recap that. When we are finding the volume we shall excavate for the soil, we shall take the center line of the trench, which is the same as the center line for the wall, because the wall is positioned at the center of the trench. So we shall take this total length of the center line of the trench. Then we shall multiply by the thickness of the trench. Then we shall multiply by the depth of the trench. Right? So the excavation for the trenches is usually calculated in terms of volume. Volume is length times width times depth. The length is the center line, the width is this width, the depth is that depth. Good. So we are done with calculation for the excavation of the foundation trenches. Alright, I think I need to show you, just in case you had a building that had internal walls. How do you calculate the excavation for the trench? Assuming this building had some an internal wall here. This building had an internal wall. So there was a wall here. So how do we measure for the trench for the internal wall? You see, these walls were meeting, the external wall and the internal wall. They meet. And these walls, they are walls, and around this one we have a trench. Alright? You should always use the broken lines to show the trench. How do we calculate for the volume of soil that will be excavated in the internal wall? What we shall do, we shall measure. Normally students make a mistake here. They measure from this wall to this wall. But you should bear in mind that we had already excavated this external trench. So where we can excavate a trench, it's only where we have not excavated a trench. And this wall, it requires a trench. So we shall measure from here, because this from here to here is already accounted for in this trench that is going like this. So we shall measure from here up to here. We shall not measure from wall to wall because it's a trench. Here already we have a trench. A trench is a hole. Already here we have a hole. Now we want to excavate for this internal wall. So we shall leave the foundation spread for the external wall because it has already been excavated. In case we account for it again, we shall measure it twice. It doesn't make sense. So we usually measure from here up to here. Alright? So the volume of soil for the excavation of the trench for the internal wall shall be the length from here to here, which is the same as the total length of wall to wall. We deduct the spread here and spread here. Then we multiply by the width of the trench, like this one, 600. Normally, for the internal walls, they are usually smaller, maybe 450. So you'll take the length from here to here, times the width of the trench, maybe 450, times the depth of the wall. In case the depth of the wall for the internal wall is different from the one for the external wall, you will take the depth of the internal wall. Alright? So that brings us to the end of the excavation for the foundation trenches.